This hour on I-24 News, European leaders are dismissing Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's claims about Iran's nuclear weapons program. The leaders say it reinforces the need for the nuclear deal and for the inspections to continue.
Plus, Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas has blamed the Jews for the Holocaust, saying their social behavior, not anti-Semitism, led to the mass killings.
President Trump says he is outraged that somebody leaked questions Special Counsel Robert Mueller reportedly wants to ask him in the Russia investigation.
And across the world, workers are taking to the streets for the annual May Day demonstrations. Some of the demonstrations have produced violent clashes with police.
From the I-24 News studios in Times Square in New York, this is Crossroads with David Shuster and Tal Heinrich.
A day after Israel's prime minister revealed proof that Iran has been lying about its nuclear weapons ambitions, the reaction by the international community has largely been, so what? Several European Union leaders say it all reinforces the need for the nuclear deal and the inspections to continue.
Mr. Netanyahu said Iran lied about pursuing nuclear weapons when it signed on to the 2015 accord, making it invalid. The White House is backing up Netanyahu's claims, but won't say if the agreement should be scrapped. International Affairs correspondent Bianca Zanini has more.
And here's what we got.
Monday night, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a dramatic revelation meant to change the future of the Iran nuclear deal. But by the time Tuesday came around, nobody had changed their mind. While Netanyahu's presentation made headlines globally, the response from the international community has been underwhelming. Saudi Arabia's Arab News put the story front and center, but by and large, Arab media and officials staying mum on the issue, focusing instead on a speech by Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. The international nuclear watchdog declining to discuss the information. The EU saying there's nothing new. Moscow, Paris, and London confirming the need for maintaining the nuclear agreement. The argument from the Europeans? We were never naive about Iran, hence the need for a deal. But back in October, the former head of the International Atomic Energy Agency told I-24 News he had never seen evidence that Iran had seriously pursued nuclear weapons.
So if they had been thinking, or some of them had been thinking of a nuclear weapon program, they would have been understandable. But I have not seen any evidence that I find have convinced me that Iran ever had a significant program. So in short, I'm not convinced that Iran had, as a state, had a nuclear weapons program. And I do not see any particular reason why one should think that, yes, after 10 years, this will be blossom up again.
Teams from Paris, Berlin, and London will arrive in Israel this weekend to study the materials. More than 55,000 pages, another 55,000 files, and 183 CDs. All proving, according to Israel, that Iran cannot be trusted. That Iran was working on producing nuclear weapons, though they promised they didn't. That the nuclear deal, signed in 2015 by Iran and international players meant to prevent Iran from having nuclear weapons, was built on lies. U.S. President Donald Trump, quick to say this proves him right. Netanyahu sending a message of support.
The publication by Prime Minister Netanyahu and its timing was aimed not to pressure President Trump, but to support a decision that was already made by the president.
The revelations could weaken the chances of fixing the deal and nudge the U.S. president toward canceling it. But revelations or not, those who supported the deal Monday still supported Tuesday. Bianca Zanini, I-24 News.
The International Atomic Energy Agency has also responded to Netanyahu's claims that Iran misled negotiators about the extent of its weapons program.
The IAEA said it has found no credible evidence that Iran pursued a nuclear bomb after 2009, and that's years before the agreement was signed. And European Union officials say the timing, as disclosed by Iran, is irrelevant.
The JCPOA, the nuclear agreement, is based not on assumption of good faith or trust. In any case, if any party, if any country has information on non-compliance of any kind, can and should address and channel these information through the proper, legitimate, recognized mechanism But again, I have not seen from Prime Minister Netanyahu arguments for the moment on non-compliance, meaning violation from Iran of its nuclear commitments under the nuclear deal.
To discuss all this, let's bring in Danny Danon, Consul General, I should say, of Israel here in New York. And Danny, what do you make of the reaction from the international community, at least the European Union, that this is much ado about nothing in the sense that, okay, they knew Iran was being misleading at the beginning?
Well, first of all, there is another reaction. It's the American reaction, the U.S. reaction, the administration, both by the President and Secretary of State Pompeo, that are very, very clear, and they affirm what Israel says. And
is that the only reaction that really matters in all this?
Well, in some senses, that matters most, but definitely not the only that matters. The JCPOA was signed by 6 parties, and they all concerned. But obviously, the Americans are the most important. That being said, I cannot. I must admit that the European reaction is amazing. It's shameful. Here there are a group of countries, some of them permanent members in the Security Council of the UN. They were lied blatantly. Actually, you know, the Iranians sold them the Brooklyn Bridge. They started the negotiation with a blatant lie that is the basis on which that architecture is built. And they say, no, it's right, nothing is happening, nothing happening. That's a shameful
Danny, they
attitude
say
by the Europeans.
We do not trust Iran. We do acknowledge that Iran was lying at some point, and this is why we need a deal. What do you think the European signatories of the Iran nuclear deal are maybe failing to understand? What is that the U.S. and Israel understand? You know,
I don't know. I don't want to get too much into psychology of nations. But we have already been in an historical situation in which European nations show the kind of naivete or the kind of stupidity in some cases that brought catastrophe over the world. I hope we are not there again.
If the goal is to keep Iran from nuclear weapons, say, over the next 7 years, you have 2 options. You can either continue the inspection regime and keep the clamps on them that way, or you can get rid of the nuclear deal and then bomb Iran, in which most analysts, even in Israel, say that militarily would only set them back by 3 or 4 years.
Two wrong assumptions in your sentence, David. Okay. The first one, the goal is not to prevent Iran to have nuclear weapons for 7 years. The goal is to prevent Iran to have nuclear weapons forever.
Okay, but
the alternative to maintaining this flawed agreement is by no way the only option blowing Iran. Yes, all the options should be in the table, as we used to say, but the main option is to fix the agreement and to, if the Iranians refuse to renegotiate, to impose on them crippling sanctions. That is the key element that should exist, that unfortunately was dismantled far too early.
Let's talk for a second about what's happening in Syria and the tensions between Israel and Iran over there. Only today, some U.S. officials quoted in certain reports attributed the attack from last night to Israel on Iranian targets in Syria. How far away are we, in your opinion, from a military confrontation, a direct one between Iran and Israel?
We are not interested in any way in the confrontation and military conflagration. But you know, Tal, it's linked to the Iranian, to the JCPOA. Because what's happening now? What is happening now is the Iranians use their wealth, and they are now very wealthy because of the billions and billions of dollars that were released, and because of the oil that they now can sell to the world in high prices. They use that wealth to build an empire, an aggressive empire in Yemen. They shoot from their missiles to Riyadh, the capital of an ally of the United States, Saudi Arabia, to colonize Syria. That is what they are doing now. They are colonizing Syria and to build up Hezbollah in order to threat Israel. What permits them to do that aggressive strategy is the fact that there are no sanctions on them on the nuclear issue.
There are some American officials who say that the Israelis have told them, Israeli leaders have told them, that if Iran attacks Israel from Syria, if Iran attacks Israel from Syria, Israel may respond by attacking Iran in Tehran. Is that a possibility?
You do not expect me to reply to that question.
I will have
But you're not denying it. I mean, if they were to take out Tel Aviv, then we're going to try to attack Tel Aviv.
The response,
right?
Israel has its ways to deliver deterrent messages to Tehran. I'm not sure that a statement by the Consul General of Israel in I-24 News is the better way to do it.
Israel can make a presentation about it, maybe.
Yeah, you're always welcome to say whatever you'd really like to say, Dave. Okay.
So we keep, the Iranians know very well that they should not attack us from any place in the world.
Danny Danon, Consul General of Israel in New York. Danny, you're always welcome on I-24 News, and good to have you.
Thank you.
When Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu revealed a massive stockpile of Iranian military secrets, he called attention to one name in particular, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh.
He is a mysterious high-ranking officer in Iran's Revolutionary Guard and a controversial nuclear scientist. I-24 News correspondent Ariel Levin-Waldman has more.
Who is the grand architect of Iran's nuclear ambitions?
Head of Project Ahmad put it. Remember that name, Fakhrizadeh.
Only one picture has ever been found of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the man who has been called Iran's Robert Oppenheimer and the father of their nuclear weapons program. He is considered by the International Atomic Energy Agency to be one of the most dangerous rogue scientists on the world stage.
When you showed the world in Farsi how close Iran was to a bomb and their planning on how to get there in specific words, it portrayed the Iranians as, first, a country that actually is so zealous to have a bomb, and second, that lied to the world.
Israel says Fakhrizadeh heads Project Ahmad, Iran's secret nuclear warhead project. His name first appeared in the media in 2007 in United Nations Security Council Resolution 1747, listed as a person involved in nuclear or ballistic missile activities. The UN identified him as a former lecturer and head of the Physics Research Center at the Imam Hussein University in Tehran. This university is no normal school, though. It's operated by Iran's Revolutionary Guard as a training, recruitment, and weapons development center. Its members are prohibited from traveling abroad or entering the private market. They are groomed to be loyal apparatuses of the Iranian regime. The Security Council resolutions singled him out as a person to be targeted with travel restrictions and financial asset freezes. The IAEA wanted to question Fakhrizadeh about his time as the head of the Physics Research Center, but Iran refused. In 2013, he surfaced again, this time in North Korea, where he allegedly observed one of their nuclear weapons tests that year. Anonymous intelligence sources told Britain's Sunday Times that the purpose of Fakhrizadeh's trip was to develop warheads small enough to fit on Iran's missiles. Now he's emerged from the cloud of secrecy in a trove of documents obtained by the Mossad. 55,000 documents and just as many files on hundreds of CDs. All original materials from Iran's weapons program. His name, his face, and a warning by the Israeli government. Iran lied, and Fakhrizadeh could still be building the bomb. Ariel Levin-Waldman, I-24 News.
Still ahead, in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, deep divisions are emerging on the Palestinian side. Members of the PLO are gathering for the first time in 20 years.
Plus, we will bring you something you won't see everywhere else. Behind-the-scenes look at one of the controversial border checkpoints between Israel and the West Bank. In the West Bank, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas spoke at the first meeting of the PLO's parliament in over 2 decades, and his speech was, by most accounts, inflammatory.
The 4-day meeting will elect 18 members of the executive committee that forms Abbas's cabinet, but Abbas's effort to tighten control, well, those efforts are generating controversy. Correspondent Emily Rose has the story.
Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas echoed anti-Semitic views on Monday, saying the Holocaust was not caused by anti-Semitism, but by the social behavior of the Jews, including money lending. This wasn't a sharp departure from past rhetoric. The PA chief who wrote his 1982 dissertation on what he claimed was a correlation between Zionism and Nazism also denied Eastern European Jews have a connection to the land of Israel. But in a 2-hour opening address to the Palestinian National Council, Abbas also took jabs at the U.S.
If the United States wants to offer something, they should support the two-state solution with East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine, and that the U.S. is no longer a sole mediator. This is what we would consider. Other than that, we will not consider this.
Abbas's speech comes as tension escalates with Gazans, launching ongoing protests on the Israel-Gaza border and the so-called March of Return, which started March 30th. Clashes are expected to intensify further, leading up to Palestinian Nakba Day, which coincides with the U.S. Embassy move, slated for May. Abbas praised the effort, but urged organizers to keep their children from protesting along the border between Israel and Gaza, warning of a, quote, handicapped generation.
I support peaceful resistance, which in my opinion that this is the only available way for us to express our stance